Hello and welcome to Logan Sounds Off, where we talk about books, music, and a whole lot more. I'm your host, Logan Kelly. So, hello and welcome to Logan Sounds Off. How are you, Mark?
I'm good, Logan. Very hot, but it is summer, and we British people tend to moan about the weather, even when it's lovely.
So, my first question is, when did you get into music?
When did I get into music?
Yeah.
You mean as in when did I recognize that I loved music?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, much younger than you. It would have been the 60s because I'm that old. I've always loved music, I mean, I remember the first time I remember music having an effect on me was when I was about 3. And my uncle Mick used to play me records that he'd just bought. And he'd just bought a brand new single called Paperback Writer by the Beatles. And he used to play them on my grandparents' radiogram in the front room. And he played this one day, and I was sitting cross-legged on the floor in front of the radiogram. I remember that clearly. And near the start of the record, the bass kicked in, and the bass was so strong that it rattled the glassware on a shelf in a nearby corner.
No way.
Yeah, they were like, whiskey kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they rattled and fell off the shelf and smashed in front of me. They were empty, but I was suddenly surrounded by this broken glass. And I think it was the combination of that bass sound, and I'd never heard anything quite like it, and this glass that's smashed, it made such an indelible effect on me that I've still never recovered, fortunately. Yeah.
Wow.
Excuse me while I pat my forehead because it is very hot and humid in here.
Wow, that's I've heard a lot of stories from people on how they discover music, but that one takes the cake now.
Oh, thank you. Right. Well, that's what broken glass does.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I like I said, I never recovered because music had such an effect on me from an early age. And in fact, my fellow school pals, when I was kind of your age or younger, they were all into football. I loved football as well, but they didn't buy any records. They only listened to records that they had at home. But I was buying records from just before my 5th birthday. I used to get. I obviously must have told my family and friends of the family that I loved records. I loved seeing. I loved the feel of them. I loved the look of them, as well as playing them and enjoying the music. I just loved the whole thing about it. And there was the Christmas just before I was 5 when I got record tokens, because they obviously thought, well, it's an easy thing. Buying record tokens, he can buy what he wants with them. And I had enough to buy 5 singles that just in the Christmas holidays. I remember it very well. And the first one I bought was a song called Everlasting Love by The Love Affair that had this amazing drum fill at the beginning and the sort of click bass line, ding, 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 ding. And it just had an effect. It just inspired me. And I so much that from a very early age, I wanted to know more about how that music was made. And so I had a very inquisitive mind.
So was that like your inspiration to become a musician?
I guess it was, yeah, because I suppose my two main instruments that I play are drums and bass and drums. And I became a drummer first of all. Well, at least a kid who owned a drum kit, a small drum kit, and then graduated to bass when I was about 13.
Following on from you saying actually that when you were 13, when you went on to bass, you have been a fan of Horslips like since you were 13. And was it a dream to become their biographer?
Oh yeah. You know, if you'd have told the 13-year-old fan that one day he was going to be their biographer, know them all personally, you
Yeah.
know, develop friendships with them, go, you know, be at gigs with them, all that kind of stuff, I'd have said, no way, this is never going to happen.
I read that you said something like that that the teenager would just laugh at you.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I've been very fortunate. You know, I mean, I've worked for it, so it's, you know, it's not something that necessarily come easy, because you have to work at these things, and you have to have something about you that's valuable to these people. But you know, they're great friends anyway. Um, but very, very proud moment when that book came out in
Yeah.
2013, Tall Tales.
Yeah. And actually asking about your book, I read that your book got the Hot Press Book of the Year award. What was that like?
Well, it was a bit strange. I mean, I've never actually got an award. You know, I haven't got anything on my wall or on my shelf that says I had Book of the Year.
I know.
I suspect that I might that title might be a little bit misleading, because they ran a feature at the end of 2013, I think it was, where it was my book and a few others, but my book got the big feature. But that section of the magazine was called, you know, book of the year or music book of the year. So I'm happy to take that, and I'm happy to run with it. You know.
Wow. So now moving on to something different. Why did you decide to co-found Total Production International? Like, because hadn't have heard of this before I heard of you.
The magazine. Well, I'm not surprised you hadn't heard of it, because it's an industry magazine. It's not something you buy on the shelf. But I recognized that there was need for a new kind of magazine to represent the industry of the technical side of the industry that puts on live shows, tours, festivals, theatre shows, stadium gigs, the whole lot. And there were magazines out there at the time that did that, but I, you know, without wanting to sound pompous, which is quite easy to do, I sort of had a vision for another way of doing it, another way of publicizing that industry, presenting stories about the way shows were designed, and I had a little bit more of an eye for the type of photography that I thought could represent it. So myself and my colleague at the time, Andy Lentil, who should be mentioned, you know, we started this magazine, and it's still going strong now. Neither of us are involved in the actual magazine anymore. I resigned from that job in 2011.
Oh.
But I think it's in good hands, so it still carries on. And it's got an annual awards event, which is
Oh yeah.
an,
Which
an
yeah.
incredible night to be at. Yeah,
Didn't they
it's
have like David Gilmour at that? I think
yeah,
one of
me. Yeah,
yeah.
there's pictures of me on stage with David Gilmour and Paul Gambaccini, who was the host that year, and I'm bald and I'm wearing a suit that is about 2 sizes too big. So it's unfortunate that the only photos I've got of me with David Gilmour, I look an absolute mess.
So why did you decide to write your book, Good Vibrations, a history of record production?
Good question. There were two reasons. One, there wasn't a book of that type that existed at the time. And in my days as a producer, when I'd get, I'd be doing a session and the guitarist would say to me, what I really want is a sound like, I know, not a good example, but I'll give you an example. A sound like Jimi Hendrix had on Voodoo Child. How can I get that sound? And I'd be like, well, we'd attempt it through trial and error, but there weren't any books around that documented the session, the Jimi Hendrix session, where that guitar sound was perfected. So I always had at the back of my mind that there should be a book like that documented the making of some of the biggest hit records. So I kept that in the back of my head. And then when I became a journalist, which was effectively 1989, 90, I was thinking that it's a very competitive world being a freelance writer. And I needed something to sort of propel my name forward a bit so that I would become a more obvious choice to be commissioned by an editor to write something. So I just basically took that idea from the back of my head, brought it forward, and went to a few publishers with the idea. To cut a long story short, there was a company that was into it, and it was a good couple of years of writing and meeting and interviewing people, and sometimes going to the States and meeting Les Paul, which was pretty incredible. And a lot of people since then have died, the people that I interviewed. It's so unfortunate, but it's a book I'm really proud of, particularly as when one of my sons, Jordan, studied at university. It was a music production course. It turned out that my book was in his recommended reading list, and so he got his degree as partially as a result of the fact that his dad wrote the book.
That's actually so cool. Imagine
It
finding
is
your
actually.
dad's book in your recommends
Yeah,
list.
excuse me. I'm absolutely dripping here.
It's fine. We've all been there.
It's not a good look. It's not a good look on TV. Makeup. Yeah. Yeah.
And then with your book as well, you were on the book was on Roots of Rock on ITV. Now, how did that happen?
Well, they were doing a series, and they about London. It was a series about London and how London had been the venue for lots of different things in music, such as the big clubs like the Marquee, etc. And then they wanted to do a program on the recording studios in London. And I got contacted by them saying that someone had read my book and they wanted to base that episode on my book, on my research, my interviews. So I got involved with that, and they actually called the episode "Good Vibrations," which was even better. Yeah, yeah, it was an exciting few days.
And now, like, you have co-founded TPI, you're an author, and now I'm going to talk a bit more about the musician side of it.
Hmm.
What instruments do you play? Like you mentioned bass and drums, but do you play anything else?
Well, I do. I mean, I play guitar. I play a bit of keyboards. Um, I I say, I'm a handy musician. I can fall into whatever's needed. I'm not, I wouldn't play keyboards like I have played keyboards live, but I wouldn't choose to. I kind of dabble really, and it's useful for when I'm doing recording because you can stop and start again if you make a mistake, and I do make lots of mistakes, so that's it's a good thing. You know, I've I learned to play cello once, just enough to play it on a track. But if you were to say to me, "Oh, play something to me on cello," it would sound awful. But I just learned how to play it enough to be useful for that track.
That's commitment. Now that is commitment.
Oh yeah, I should definitely be committed. Yeah.
Yeah. And then who have you played with?
Who have I played with? Well, most of the people that I've played with are not well known. But um, I've had fleeting kind of associations with some acts that some people would have heard of. I played with Horslips on stage.
No way.
Yeah, at the book launch. Yeah, I might not.
That's
I
that's
might
still a
not
big
have.
deal.
Yeah, I might not have played with them elsewhere, but I think maybe they felt duty bound to invite me on stage. But yeah, I played bass with them. We did The Man Who Built America together, and I've played with people that I can mention. I auditioned for the Pretenders, which was interesting. I wasn't so much that I wasn't good enough to be in the band. I was a bit too young and inexperienced. But then again, I might not have been good enough. Don't know. Played with Lindisfarne for a little while. Um, I've uh, I've sat in front of Paul McCartney and played guitar with him.
No, that's like a once in a lifetime thing. That's amazing.
It was an accident. It was an accident. It wasn't
Oh.
planned, which kind of makes it even more special. Yeah,
Yeah.
I, I was interviewing him about his acoustic guitar playing. And it was interesting to him, I suppose, because people normally ask him about his bass playing, and which this interview was mainly about. But there were questions about his acoustic guitar playing, and I said, you've got a very heavy thumb, the way that you pick. And I used the song Yesterday, as an example that, it's a very dominant kind of boom, jing, 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 boom, jing, jing, jing. And he didn't quite understand it. So he he said, oh, because he's left-handed and I'm right-handed, he said, Robbie, Robbie McIntosh was his guitarist at the time, and he said, well, you play, show me what you mean. So I picked up the guitar and I'm like playing it away, and he said, okay, and then he started playing along with me, and the next thing I know, he's going, yesterday all my troubles seem so far away, and suddenly I'm like, I'm playing Paul McCartney's most successful song with him, you know.
Now that's kind of one of
it,
those thoughts that just
it
bam.
it lasted about 40 seconds, I suppose. But you don't get 40 seconds like that normally in life. Yeah. So I've had a few kind of occasions like that. with other musicians, where I've found myself, doing an interview and it will turn into something else. Do you know the guitarist Joe Satriani?
No.
Right. Well, he's a sort of a jazz fusion prog metal guitarist who is revered by musicians, as like one of the world's best. And I was interviewing him in a hotel room, and he had a couple of guitars. He gave me a guitar, and he was giving me a guitar lesson, off the cuff. And I definitely wasn't worthy, but it was just a peculiar situation to be in. I told people about it afterwards, and they're like, Joe Satriani gave you a guitar lesson, and I'm like, yeah, and they're like, do you know how cool that is? And I'm like, well, I suppose it is, yeah. But it was supposedly he was answering a question, and he as a result of the question, he was giving me a guitar lesson about how he did something.
Wow.
Excuse me again.
And now my final question. Are you working on anything at the moment, music-wise or film-wise?
Yeah. I can't tell you though. It's a secret. That's a bummer. That's a bummer. Yes, I can. Okay. What am I working on? Well, I've just finished the Horslips box set, which is called More Than You Can Chew.
Yeah.
Which was supposed to have been released at the end of July, but there were some manufacturing issues that slowed down the process. I think they switched manufacturers, and as a result, the whole thing slowed down a little bit. So what was coming out at the end of July is coming out on December the 4th. I mean, that was a huge project. Again, hard to call it work when you're doing something that you enjoy so much with a band that you respect so much. But it was a huge project where I designed everything. I literally designed everything. It was, the box, the CDs, 2 books that I also wrote, and as well as the actual labels of the CDs. It's it's one of those dream projects. I'm actually, can you hear my dogs?
Yep.
Hang on. Can we
pause?
Can we pause? Because I think I've got a delivery. Sorry, I'll be back. I've just taken delivery of a piano keyboard for my wife.
God, I can hear the dogs in the background.
Yeah,
I have one too. I get it. And good God, he is a protector. So I totally get it.
Oh yeah, they're very lovely dogs. They won't bite or anything, but they're just very animated.
Yeah.
Where were we?
With the box set. Actually, do you mind me asking? What's the price of the box set?
£1 million.
No way.
No. I think it's about €299. So, I mean, it's a hefty price, but it's very good value for what's in there.
Yeah, because
you got 33 discs.
You're kidding me.
33 CDs.
Yeah.
2 DVDs.
Okay, that's already really good price.
2 books. A poster, I think. Some repros of old fan club newsletters. There's something else as well. Oh yeah, autographed photos. So
wow,
it's brilliant. I mean, ask for it for Christmas.
Exactly.
ask Make sure Santa gets that note, okay?
So are you working on anything else?
Yeah, I'm always working on something. I'm working on a book that is the sort of history and culture of Windmill Lane Studios, recording studios in Dublin.
No way. I went there. Class.
Did
That's a
you?
yeah, Windmill Lane is class.
All right. Well,
Wow.
that's going to be a Kickstarter project. I probably shouldn't say too much about it because that's down to them. But I've been commissioned to write it. I'm not sure what the status is right now, but I've been doing some interviews with a variety of people who have recorded there, and I've got a lot more interviews to do as well. And they've all been like Zoom interviews like this. I'm working on another couple of books, but I can't really say anything about them. Not yet. I've been working on a film about John Lennon called Borrowed Time. Well, that's the working title. I don't know if it would be the final title, but with a director called Alan G. Parker, who's a great guy. We've become great friends, and he's done documentaries on Monty Python, Status Quo, lots of other things. Also, a documentary about the Beatles, Sergeant Pepper, which came out in 2017 for the 50th anniversary. And that's kind of how we hooked up, as a result of that film. And so I've been involved in this one. I'm interviewed on camera, which it's always a nerve-wracking thing for me, being interviewed. I don't mind this so much. It's like the whole
Yeah.
thing about being on a camera.
Yeah.
Sort of racked with self-doubt, how much of a mess do I look? Is everything that's going to come out of my mouth going to sound interesting, or am I just going to be totally boring? So you don't know. I don't know how much of it will be used, if any. But my other involvement is a sort of a consultancy role about the history. Also, I'm the art director, so I'm in charge of the poster and the graphics and all that. And I'm supposed to be advising on a bit of animation that's going to be done for it. So, that's all cool.
Well, that was my final question, and I just want to say, Mark, thank you so much for joining me. It's been such an honor to talk to you and to learn all
Oh,
about your life.
the pleasure is all mine, Logan, and it's great to meet you. And I'm absolutely thrilled with your passion for doing all this. You remind me of a bit of me when I was your age. Yeah.
Well, thank you, and I hope I see you again soon. Let me know when that Windmill Lane book comes out.
Oh yeah, you'll know about it anyway because it'll be publicised to the absolute hilt, I'm sure. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I'll see you, Mark. Have a great day.
All the best. Keep on rocking.
Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Logan Sounds Off. And if you have any questions or requests, you can email logansoundsoff@gmail.com.